Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Swift Life where we go over the WWDC Keynote that took place on Monday, June 3rd, 2019. And with me I have a Chronic Ale from Pizza Port Brewing Company. It is an amber ale with, seems like a lot of puns relating to marijuana on it. This guy right here definitely smokes weed. I'm showing the can. To the Chronic Ale, and yeah, this guy's definitely smoking weed. I mean, sitting on the beach on a bicycle with a surfboard, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Dive right in, and our great and mighty CEO, Tim Apple, takes the stage in the beginning, and he talks about how developers bring value to the Apple ecosystem. So thank you for that, Tim Apple. We very much appreciate that. And then, of course, they cut to a video of, some Apple exclusive space shuttle thingy that they're doing. And I tweeted about it. I was live tweeting this, and I was like, all new space shuttles will be built in Swift 5. So I think that's the plan. If they're taking their advice from me, that's definitely the plan. Another thing, they started off talking about Apple TV. So they added support for multiple users in Apple TV. Like, when you go to Netflix and, you select different users, Apple TV is going to have that same feature built in, which is pretty cool. And then also, they're bringing the Apple Arcade to Apple TV, and of course, trying to use that Apple TV remote for a game sucks. So they're adding support for PS4 DualShock controllers and Xbox One controllers. So, by the way, the audience really got a kick out of when he said PS4. Like, why? What's the deal with devs and PS4? Like, I'm pretty into Xbox One. But, whatever. Anyway, the next thing that came up was the Apple Music integration into tvOS, which I don't have Apple TV, so, it was more for the users and everything. So if you have Apple TV, that stuff will be showing up soon. Also, they added a new feature, which was the displaying lyrics while you're playing music on the screen of the Apple TV, which also works in Apple Music in iOS now, or in iOS 13, which I'll get to later. Ellen Shapiro at Designated Nerd on Twitter, she's pretty funny. She had a funny tweet about this. It says, "We'd like to announce that we've invented a way to sing along to music while the lyrics display on your TV screen." And then she was like, so, ... karaoke? And so moving on to the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch came out with the WatchOS 6, which hopefully makes it easier to develop on. It's a pain in the ass to develop on, guys. So it looks cool. I really like what they're doing with the watch heads because people just want to glance at their watch, and they add a lot of customization to the watch head, which now that they have a little bit more room, like the original Apple Watches, like you had very little space, that a screen was actually present. So now they've kind of pushed the screen to the edges, and they have more room to put things. It's still kind of small to do a lot of the things that Apple is trying to do to it. So I haven't got one yet, but wireless audio streaming without having your phone on you was added to WatchOS, which is really cool for anybody that works on streaming apps. You can add watch support. Apple Watch has its own app store, so it'll be interesting to see if native Apple Watch stuff comes out solely for the watch. I think that would be. I'd like to see the projects, because I don't have a watch. I'm not really into the watch design and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the community make out of it, as well as a lot of this stuff. Like this was a really good keynote. They added stuff like a decibel meter to the watch, so that you can measure the decibels, and it'll tell you if, like, oh, this is too loud. If you listen to this too long from, you know, if you're at like a rock concert, it'll be like, you need to get away because you're going to have temporary hearing loss if you don't get away from this right now, or whatever. So thanks, Apple Watch, for continuing to make me feel bad about my life choices. And yeah, I mean, looking at the keynote, they made the watch look really, really cool. Now I kind of want one. When before I was like, you know, I can really leave that. Like, I have AirPods. That was much more important to me than a watch. But yeah, I'm getting to where, like, okay, I'm going to have to hop on this train pretty soon. But anyway, then they dove into iOS and some of the new features in iOS, which first they went over, you know, they have like an 85% adoption rate to the new iOS, which really makes our jobs easier as developers. Let's see what else. The download sizes for apps have shrunk by, what did they say, 30% or something like that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but the ABI stability has a lot to do with that, because the language is already built into the phone. So now you don't have to, upload the language, all the code that you're using to the app, or from the app to your phone, because your phone already has Swift built in and understands all your functions and things. Next up was dark mode. Everybody was stoked for dark mode. Me too. I will definitely use it. I use dark mode in everything that provides it, like macOS Mojave and Twitter and all that stuff. So that's great. The swipe to type iOS keyboard, that's sick. Like how they had the the Samsung, that Android phones will have the, like, where you swipe without taking your thumb off the screen to type messages. So Apple added that. Let's see. A lot of machine learning integration into iOS. So in let's see, what is it? Like the Photos app had a lot of stuff like, oh, look at this post from a year ago, which is really just taking things, you could do that in your own Photos app pretty easily. Just say, last time you were here 6 months ago, this happened. So, I mean, it's cool, but the useful thing to me was reminders. Reminders looked really cool with, because I use reminders a lot. So if you just type in, remind me that I have a meeting at 6, it'll pop up and say, like, do you want to save this to your calendar? When do you want to be reminded? Blah, blah, blah. How do you want to be reminded? Like, I'm excited to play around with that. Apple Maps got a major upgrade, but I don't really care. I don't use Apple Maps. So along with like most normal humans. So I heard something before the keynote that they were going to talk about Google Maps integration with Apple Maps, and sadly that didn't happen. Like, please just bring Google Maps back to the maps. Just give it up, guys. Anyway, let's move on to iPadOS. This was cool. So they straight up, iOS 13 is not what they're calling it on the iPad. It is now iPadOS. So I guess it's going to be iPadOS 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. But that's cool that they realized. I think for them internally it's great too, because they realized that the iPad is not just a giant iPhone screen. And things like the split views and having really intuitive gestures are really cool. So they basically, with this iPadOS, they just added a lot of things that look really cool on the iPad, and help productivity. Like I use 2 screens here for my dev setup, so 2 big screens. So like it'd be really hard for me to operate on like a 10-inch MacBook with like 2 different side-by-side things. But I'll check it out. You know, I'm excited to see all these things. Let's see. Also in iOS, they added some customizing to the Memojis, which is fun. You always love when they add some new emojis. Memojis are fun to just, you know, play around with. Also some privacy features. Craig, good old Craig, was up there talking about a new anonymous way to sign in with Apple. You can now sign in with Apple in various apps. They offer that in the UI kit, or I guess SwiftUI, as we'll get to later. Whew, that's a big one. And what they basically do is create an anonymous email address that kind of a front, you know, for an email address for you that comes to you, and for each app you have an individual email address that will be randomized and sent to you. So if you want to end notifications from this app, you just delete and it'll delete that email address and end all communication that way, which is really cool. I mean, you know, you don't want to download an app and immediately give it all your information. So that's a good step towards privacy by Apple. You know, some devs might be upset that they don't get that data, but I think that data privacy is really, really important. So whenever you don't have to take somebody's data, don't do it. You don't want to end up like Facebook with this kind of reputation. Oh, Siri reads your messages to you on your AirPods, which is great. So any messaging app that's synced up with SiriKit will read you your messages. So assuming, I mean, WhatsApp, you know, we'll use SiriKit to read messages. That's a really, really cool, useful feature. Although I've never used Siri shortcuts, which they expanded, and they now add it as a like it comes with your phone now, which, whatever, probably delete it. Let's see. Next up, for any of you devs that have large bags of cash on hand, the Mac Pro was announced. It has an available 1.5, get this, 1.5 terabytes of RAM. 1.5 terabytes of RAM. Did not hear that wrong. 1.5 terabytes. That is ridiculous. Like I can't imagine the kind of speed. Like mine has 32 gigabytes, and I thought that was a lot. Like my Mac is pretty damn fast. 1.5 terabytes is just like too much. Like, oh man, you're pushing it to the limit, guys. It also has a 28 core Intel Xeon processor. It can suck up 300 watts of power without making a ton of noise. I mean, the thing is just a machine. Okay, this thing is ridiculous. It looks like the old Mac Pro, which I really like. I used to have one, and I loved the design of it. I thought it was super cool. But a lot of people are calling it a cheese grater, so if you want to look up some pictures of that, I suppose it looks like a cheese grater. But it was made for something about the cooling system, really efficient cooling using that. And also, they had, so yeah, I tweeted, the Mac Pro can send us to the Andromeda Galaxy by its damn self. which it might be able to do. They also talked about the screen, the extreme dynamic range screen. That it was I think it was a 6K Retina display on the that came with the Mac Pro. It didn't come with it. It's an extra $5 grand. So the Mac Pro starts at $6 grand. 1.5 terabytes of RAM. I wonder how much that'll cost you. But probably what 30 grand, you think? I don't know. But yeah, I got a nice chuckle from the audience when they announced that the extreme definition or the extreme dynamic range screen for the Mac Pro costs $5 grand, and the stand that it sits on, the stand that doesn't come with it, costs $1,000. That might have been my favorite part of the whole keynote because everybody just laughed at him. And yeah, there's Sebastian DeWitt, so SDW on Twitter. He tweeted, "It can suck up 4.2 cats worth of hair or 1.2 medium dogs with its massive airflow. It can wheel around by itself," the Mac Pro added, has wheels on it. "It is our most powerful Mac yet. A Roomba, a self-driving vehicle, a Mac Pro. Are you getting it? These aren't 3 separate devices." So they came out with the MacOS OS Catalina, which of course required me to tweet a Step Brothers GIF because it's the goddamn Catalina operating system. And with that came Catalyst, aka Marzipan, aka run your iOS apps on Mac. It's here and it looks pretty cool, gotta say. It's on OS Catalina. You just go into Xcode and you type Mac, or not type, check the box for Mac when you go, check all the devices that it's able to, that you want your app to be available on. So that's really exciting. The Catalyst framework is already ready. You just have to have the beta versions of Xcode and and all the beta operating systems, which I'm not putting on my machine, but I'm excited to see what other people do on YouTube, or Paul Hudson's always on top of this stuff on hackingwithswift.com. I'm going to keep my eye out there. But yes, really exciting stuff. And now we get to the piece de résistance. Is that correct? Swift. So I'm going to start out with the SwiftUI. SwiftUI is a new framework developed for Swift that works with the Mac. It works with the iPad, works with iOS, works with the Watch, and it's a very user-friendly UI setup. Totally different than you'd use table views in the past. From the looks of what they were using in the tutorial, you just drag and drop a list onto your UI and it updates automatically side by side. The code updates. Instead of having to do things in Interface Builder, which you don't remember, hey, did I check that box in Interface Builder or should I set that in code? You'll have it all in one area. Which, if you have a chance, it's unlike anything code looking wise, unlike anything I've seen in Swift. So very excited where they're going to go with SwiftUI. Of course, it's brand new, so it's going to be limited, but it seemed to work well in the video during the keynote, so why wouldn't it work if you just bang on it a bunch? I'm sure it'll be fine. But with new software, new additions to Xcode, don't get too too hyped about it, even though, I mean, what am I talking about? I totally am. Because the stuff it's got to mature. Yeah, you know, there's going to be bugs, there's going to be issues that SwiftUI doesn't solve problems that maybe you could do with code or in the interface builder. So, you know, it's not perfect, but it looks like it's going to be, it's the future, basically, of iOS development, and rightfully so. I mean, it is some beautiful code, guys. Seeing what they've done with these tutorials, I mean, the way it's laid out, it's so pretty. Like, I want to take it to Vegas and marry it. So yeah, keep your eye out for SwiftUI. Also, there's a new one that a lot of developers were excited about that I haven't seen or played with, called Combine. Like when you combine things, two things together. But basically, it's customized handling of asynchronous events by combining event processing operators with publisher protocol and a subscriber at the end of those publishers to that receive the values, and they can represent user interface events, network responses, scheduled events, and many other kinds of asynchronous data. It basically is just for processing values over time. Now I'm reading from the documentation here. As far as explaining this, I'm gonna have to play with it a little more. But people are very excited. More, you know, like more senior guys are super stoked about this. So we'll see where that goes as well. It's in beta right now. Oh, and the last thing they did for Mac, it wasn't the last time, I skipped over it. What they did for Mac was they took, a lot of people were suspecting that they would do this, but they took iTunes and they broke it into three separate apps. So you have podcasts, music, and what was the third one? Oh, Apple TV. Apple TV. That was the third one. So basically, yeah, they've broken up iTunes, which is exciting because I like listening to podcasts while I'm working, or just doing some light work, surfing, something like that. Podcasts are really cool. So instead of listening to them on my iPhone, I can listen to them on the Mac. And as far as Swift development goes, they've added Swift Package Manager that supports iOS apps. So basically, we'll see if that is going to knock CocoaPods and Carthage off the throne of installing third-party software or third-party libraries to your apps. But you know, I guess we're gonna have to, with a lot of the Swift stuff, we're gonna have to play around and see what it looks like before coming to a final verdict. Hey, can this replace what we have now? You don't want to just migrate everything to SwiftUI and then be like, holy crap, half of it doesn't work or the way we want it to or whatever. So it looks really, really cool. The whole keynote, I mean, just summing up the whole keynote, it was really exciting for me to watch it, and I watched them every year, but just to be able to watch it and talk to the community on Twitter was a really fun time, and I'm excited for the Swift changes. The SwiftUI especially is the most exciting. Another really exciting, because I was stoked about the arcade since day one, so the Xbox controller working with the arcade is a total win for me. Some other things, yeah, the playing music on your AirPods and then you get a message and then it reads you the message. That's great for me. But yeah, I guess with these other features, we're going to have to see where it takes us. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you found this useful, consider subscribing. to my podcast or my YouTube step-by-step programming. And follow me on Twitter at Miles of Tweets if you are a tweeting fellow. Tweeting fellow. But anyways, see y'all later.